What is your authentic voice? How do you express your soul's passions in this lifetime? We're going to explore that and more today on Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network with another Aussie friend, Louise Charman-James. Stay tuned, coming up.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
Welcome to another show, Accentuating the Positive with Karen Swain. As always, a blessing to be with you all. Well, we've got the goddesses from down under today with Louise Charman-James on the show. Welcome, Louise.
Thanks, Karen. Great to be here.
Great to have you on the show. Louise has got an amazing story. I'm just going to edit your mic just a little bit, which we'll dive into. But you're listening on the United Public Radio Network, as I said, and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM, syndicated radio all across America and Canada. And we're streaming on at least 8 platforms today. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Odyssey, and Rumble. So hopefully I'll see some of your comments on there. We love your comments. Remember to leave your comments and ask questions if you've got any questions. So let me tell you a little bit about Louise. I've known Louise for quite a few years and she's pretty amazing. Louise Charman-James had always had a feeling she didn't belong here on earth. I think many of you do that. Then at the age of 12, when the Christian church wanted to confirm her, she thought before she does that, she wanted to read the Bible from front to back to see what she was in for. After that, she explored other books, including books on black magic, and became disillusioned with Christianity. So she went on a spiritual journey exploring devotional chanting, which massively opened her heart, giving her a sense her soul was coming home. Today, Louise is a sound healer, light language channel, sacred singer, soul mentor, and founder of Soul Signature, passionate about supporting light workers and conscious creatives to activate and express their own soul gifts and their authentic voices. Louise works with channeled light language songs and the frequencies of compassionate love to bring about powerful shifts in self-realization and healing. She believes our true nature is one of inherent love and divinity, and we are here to remember the light we are and to delight in expressing our light in our human forms. And Louise lives with her family on the beautiful east coast of Australia and serves awakened souls around the planet. And she's also a mother of of 2. We've got 2.
Mother of 2.
Yeah, and one is on what has been called on the spectrum. Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, my beautiful angel Gabriel, who is really like a being of light and, has chosen to express that in various ways. So, an autism diagnosis, but, I feel that's very much, about just being a kind of a very different and sensitive being. And, he's had some other issues as well this year, but, he is such a being of light and such a joy and a gift in my life and my family's life and everyone who meets him. Actually, he really brings that innocence, which is something you really see a lot with children on the spectrum and adults on the spectrum, just an innocence and a joy and a very much a connection to the heart. Like they don't have the social filters, very self-expressed. And that is great, and that's great for us. It's been great for me, right? Because it's made me challenge all of, look at all the places where maybe I'm not being fully authentic, because he'll discern that, they take everything so literally. So we have to watch what we say, right? And we have to be so conscious about, what am I really committing to when I say something, you know, someone who doesn't have that ability to just kind of manage all of the manipulation that's going on all the time is really refreshing and a real wake-up call. And I do believe that's why we have so many of these beings on the planet now. They're kind of waking us up to hang on, like, are you living in your truth? Are you even expressing your truth? What are you talking about?
They're waking us
really
up to
own the
ourselves.
power of our words, our voices. Yeah,
absolutely. The other night I was doing a talk at a community event, and there was a little boy there who was on, when I say little boy, he was probably, I don't know, he's probably in his 30s or 40s, but they look very young. He was a Down syndrome. Do they call Down syndrome on the spectrum? They're on the spectrum too, right? I don't know the
it's a little bit different from, but
language
I mean, it's
around it. Yeah, but he's just, I've always thought that if you wanted to come to Earth and just be pure love, then you would definitely come as a Down syndrome, because they
are beautiful.
Pure love. And he's just so literal. Like, I was talking quite complicated spiritual things, and he was listening. His big eyes were wide open. He was listening, but he was taking everything so literally, and he was so cute, and he was interrupting me all the time, but he was so beautiful. He was so brave. He didn't care about what people thought. He just wanted to express himself. He's just open-hearted, just delight, absolute delight. Yeah. But let's get a little bit into your story. We had a glimpse of it, that, you know, they wanted to confirm you, and you thought before I put my hand up to say yes, I'm confirmed of anything, I really need to know more about it. So what was going on when you were a kid?
Well, you know, like, I mean, I always had that sense as a child, like, you know, what is this world? Like, I always knew there was something beyond it, and was a bit confused by it. And just even being in a body, and still even now, like, you know, I'll get up in the morning and like, here we are again, you know, it's kind of Avatar. Here I am in this form. So I definitely was on a spirit, you know, I was the only one in my family who really was a spiritual seeker. I mean, you know, my mother took us to church. My dad didn't believe in anything at all. But, you know, my sisters kind of went along unquestioningly with this process of like, oh, you're going to be confirmed. Like, you know, and I'm like, what is this? You know, I could sense it was some kind of, you know, initiation and ceremony. And I'm like, well, I want to know what I'm in for. So I actually committed as a 12-year-old. I read a bit of the Bible every day, which is kind of weird for a 12-year-old to do that. So I, you know, read it all the way through. And then did some, you know, but was really exploring, you know, even exploring other things, you know, novels about kind of black magic and satanic rites and things like that. Like, I had this spiritual seeking that wanted to kind of know all of it, but I found it deeply unsatisfying, you know, that and particularly what I found with Christianity was so self-negating. You know, you're a sinner, like, you know, you need something outside of yourself to save you. Like, my soul reacted to that a lot. I did not like that. So I ended up going, you know, leaving England, because I grew up in England, you know, leaving all of those structures and traditions and going to Australia and starting my, you know, a spiritual journey there, which was, you know, had a whole lot of other aspects to it. I don't know if you want to go into those now, but one of the through lines, I think, for me around, you know, whether it's through Christianity or then in the devotional chanting practice, which is more related to the Eastern traditions, was the sound and the being in the sacred space and the sound, you know, using my voice. I loved the singing, you know, it's probably why I stuck with going to church, because I love the singing. And then devotional chanting in that Eastern tradition, which, you know, has become much more popular as well. Again, it wasn't the traditions of the religion I was interested in. It was this experience of being in space with others as well, and just feeling this, you know, by chanting, my voice, the vibrations of my voice were actually activating and doing something to my being. You know, my soul had this feeling of coming home, you know, after being like lost in the wilderness for thousands of years, you know, tears streaming down my face. You know, and that's what can happen sometimes, you know, you just get an activation when you're ready. Yeah.
I felt like that when I read the Conversation with God books. I was sitting up in bed just crying with joy and remembrance through the first 3 books, just like, oh my God, I remember. But let me ask you, how old were you when you came out to Australia? Don't have an English accent anymore.
Straight after university. Yeah, so I was 22, I think. I think I had my 23rd birthday at Uluru, which is kind of...
oh, nice. Yeah.
You know, and I do think sometimes you're kind of guided, your soul takes you to places where you kind of get to, you know, connect with soul fragments and kind of reintegrate. Like, I just knew I mustn't go back. You know, I needed to break out of traditional structures of family and expectations, you know, that I would do certain work, or that, you know, I just needed to break out of that. So I think that's a common story. People have
so you found exploring your spiritual journey away from home, away from where you grew
Yeah.
up, was a lot easier. You didn't
Yes.
feel like there was
Yeah.
any pressure on you to conform to what had always been known.
No, that's
So
right.
you could
And
come
this
out here to
freedom.
Australia and just be anything, reinvent yourself, be
Yes.
anything you want.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
And-
Exactly. And I mean, yeah, exactly. Get away from all of those structures that have kind of hemmed you in, you know, like we expect you to be like this, and that we tend to fall into naturally when we're, I think everyone experiences this. You go back to family and suddenly you kind of become who you were with them. And so you don't have that freedom to be your authentic self. So, you know, sometimes we do need to take ourselves away from that so that we can actually start to, like, I didn't even know who I was really. And I'm an identical twin as well, which that's sort of a doubly hard. And, you know, yeah, I didn't really have a sense of who I was as an individual because I'd always been kind of lumped in with my sister. So, you know, I needed to get away from that and find who I was. And it definitely was a big spiritual journey once I got here. I think Australia is a very spiritually activating land, so good place for me. Yeah. So I guess too, you know, I had a big initiation.
Sorry, my computer's a little slow.
I lost you there, so I thought I might get going.
I'm doing a million things and it's not happening. It's just like I'm pressing buttons and it's not happening. So I was a bit slow. But yeah, down under there's a lot of Shirley's online. She says hello, hi, darling one. There's a lot of kirtan. There's a lot of Eastern religion and tradition down here. There's kirtans galore. There's a kirtan yoga center on every corner in Sydney. Well, at least where I live, anyway. So it's very big down here. So you found that sort of devotional aspect
was really activating, you know. And one of the other things I love about Australia is that, you know, the song lines and that, and, you know, and the deep Indigenous tradition here. I think like that's so infused through the land. And you know, to me, coming to Australia felt like, you know, I felt like kind of, you know, there was this majestic continent, and I was, you know, a much smaller person, you know, in relation to that. Like it made me, I developed a much deeper connection to the land and nature here, I think, than I'd had in England. I think because it's just so incredibly like ancient and powerful. That really, and I was just so interested in, you know, a lot of that Indigenous culture, but couldn't find much about it. You know, I think there's just such a spiritual power in this land, and I think that was, you know, it was part of that as well. Even though I was tapping in through Eastern tradition, I was doing it here, you know, really feeling that activation here. So for me, that's where I feel I was meant to be for that part of my life. Yeah. Lost you again, Carmen.
I know that it won't let me come back on. When I come off it, I try to get back on and it won't let me come back on. But yeah, there's so much mixture of different tradition here. Like there's friends of mine that have grown up Jewish, and then they're singing all this kirtan, and they call themselves Hindus. Which I think is hilarious.
Yeah. But, you know, that's the thing. I think, you know, I mean, I've always had this thing about, I have a thing about like country borders. Like we are Earth citizens. We're not even, a lot of us aren't even from here, but this is what, you know, to me, it's a planet, one planet. I've always struggled with that. Always. You know, why did we chopped it up and said, I'm this and you're that? Like, to me, that's so opposite to the truth of our, you know, multidimensional divine nature. It's like, why would I define myself as, you know, English or Australian? I really struggle with that. You know, it's like, for now, I'm living on the earth, but, you know, I am actually a multidimensional being. And so, you know, I'd love to see that shift. And, you know, that we're welcoming beings from other planets, that we're all, you know, we're living in this multiverse together. So, you know, I think the nationalistic tendencies that we often have as humans, you know, that's something that has to dissolve. And it's so interesting to watch all the politics going on around borders and shutting people out. Like it's so the other end of the spectrum to like, hey, we're all one species, maybe, you know, hybrids and whatever. Yeah.
You know, the word of the song, imagine, there's no heaven, no hell, like, no borders. Look, I've been listening, obsessed with American politics, because it's just so bloody entertaining. And then all the sort of mainstream news shows and current affairs shows, they're like exploding and loving it and hating it. And it's just the best sitcom show on earth at the moment. But anyway, and I hear a lot of people speak, and sure, it is American politics, but they're speaking about things that will have a global effect. but they always just say for Americans. And I always think for humans, because this is affecting us here in Australia. And they're always saying, well, for Americans. But yeah, we're not just Americans or Australians, we're human, you know, and a lot of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, we're a consciousness. This is what we've got to get. Humanity is a consciousness, you know, irrespective of borders. So, how can we be good citizens of the earth? By really being aware of our own consciousness and what we're doing with that energy. You know, when we're watching the show, like you're saying, you know, watching the reality show, and boy, have we got sucked into that, haven't we?
The reality shows.
So we really have it. It's all like, yeah, come and watch this over there and forget about, you know, what about, you know, the show inside? Like, you know, are you watching what's going on with your own soul and your own evolution? And what are you doing? You know, our attention is such a resource, such a valuable resource. You know, are you throwing it away, you know, out there when you're actually not giving that attention to yourself? And you're such an important part of this whole planet's evolution, each one of us. So, you know, and remembering too, you know, if we're all co-creating it, everything that's playing out there is somehow going on in here.
Absolutely.
Right? That's what we've got to really, haven't we? Like, what are we creating? Where's, you know, all that conflict and divisiveness? And
how do we bring it back to self?
Yeah.
You know, I've called this the rise of the feminine, and Louise was saying, well, it's not really, you know, what I talk about. I talk about a lot of other things, and authentic voice is one of them, which we'll get into. But I thought it was such an important thing to talk about today, especially with what's gone on over there, because the political group of people that are in power are kind of like male energy on steroids, you know.
Yeah, you know, and we definitely,
and a lot of people are calling for that sort of leadership and that, you know, no fear, sort of just moving forward, which is a fantastic energy, but it needs to be combined with the feminine energy. It's really all one energy. It's just source energy, and we compartmentalize everything: male, female, masculine, feminine. But it's really all one energy. But you need all of it, you know. You need the divine feminine, divine masculine to work together to really achieve what you want to achieve in the world. What do you want to say about the rise of the feminine as we watch the reality show?
Yeah. I mean, look, in terms of reality show, and let's be clear that we all chose to kind of go on this adventure of moving into that distorted masculine, and now we need to swing back towards, you know, bringing more of that feminine energy. And what does that mean? Like, I think each of us can feel into that. Like, what does that actually mean in terms of qualities? Because we're really talking about qualities here, aren't we? We're not really talking about, I mean, these are polarities, but what do we actually mean by, you know, masculine and feminine, divine masculine and feminine, and being aware too that they both have their distortions. So the feminine can distort into victimhood, you know,
absolutely,
and the masculine can distort into over control, and so
oligarchy,
again, you know, yeah. So where are those energies within ourselves, you know? And when we feel into feminine, we're probably feeling it's more, you know, it's more nurturing, more inclusive, you know, kind of more, you know, maybe more of that kind of energy, deeply creative as well, but more holistic. I think that's a key thing. And I don't know if you've ever read that amazing book by Leonard Shlain, The Alphabet versus the Goddess. Super interesting how when literacy came in, being more kind of linear, so masculine energy more linear, more goal oriented, you know, I'm hunting that deer, you know, feminine energy more diffuse, more holistic, right? And so we used to have we're working with that part of our brain that's more holistic, more image based, you know. And then these religions came in with a lot of scripture or whatever, get rid of the images, worshipping the goddess image. Well, now that we've got and that sort of was, you know, commensurate with that rise of that more masculine, linear, controlling kind of, you know, get to the goal kind of mentality, right? Well, now we're coming more image-based with the internet, like a lot of that. Look at the rise of Instagram, you know, like there's more of that imagery. Now that's actually activating our brains into more of a holistics, bringing both of those parts online again. So I thought this was super interesting. And that was written quite a long time ago. But, you know, it's just we've all played out this distortion of becoming more like, you know, get to the goal, you know, kind of, or, you know, no holds barred, that kind of thing. And now we're kind of like, well, what did we leave out in that process? And so the feminine's going to kind of, we have that awareness, you know, feminine is a much more, you know, let's bring everybody in, and it's more cohesive. It's got that connecting energy. versus the kind of like cut away and head that. So we need both of those things. Like sometimes we need
Yeah.
that.
As
Yeah,
I
that's it, but
as I think about what you're saying, I'm thinking, as in regards to the law of attraction and being a deliberate creator, the 3-part process is ask, orchestrate, receive. And it's that receiving or that allowing, which has been denoted to the feminine, that allowing rather than actioning to make it happen, that allowing it to unfold. And then being really sensitive to how you feel. So sensitivity and intuition and psychic ability has all been equated to feminine energy. So actioning something is like, I've got to make this happening, because you're not, like over-actioning, because you're not sensitive to what vibration you're putting out, which is attracting to you, so you can sit back and be the receiver as opposed to the actioner. But I think both are a part of it, like both. But that receiving, that allowing energy and being sensitive to the vibration within you so that you can feel your vibrational stance, so that you know where you are in that receiving process, like allowing life to bring you what you want, being sensitive to your own frequency and vibration, and actioning from a place of inspiration rather than motivation. Like I've got to do this to get what I want. I've got to get motivated, rather than feeling that well up of inspiration inside you and going, oh, that feels like a really good thing to do. I'm going to go and do that. Yeah.
Exactly. And what you just described, there is that process of, our feminine is going to connect us to the impulses of our heart, and then our masculine is going to go put those things into action. Right. Exactly. So that's that creative process. So, often we've got a bit disconnected from listening to the heart, because we've been taught not to do that, right from when we're children, stop daydreaming, stop crying, whatever, just get on with it, that's the kind of upbringing I had, really. It's like very little space for feelings, and I was a deeply feeling child, and very much like, what can you do, which is partly why I needed to stay away from all of those expectations. And and I teach this too in some of my programs, around this balance between inspired action and then dropping back into that place of receptivity and flow, so that it can unfold as well. And we're going to always be doing that dance, and that's what's beautiful when we get those energies together. It is a divine union, it is a dance. It is kind of, in the Eastern tradition, it's Shiva and Shakti. He's kind of like holding this space, and she's dancing, and he's holding this structure for her. it's like he's the landscape, she's the weather, I think, is one of the quotes I've heard about that, which I really like. And so within ourselves, it's like we want to create, we're holding a structure, I'm holding firm, but I'm also moving and I'm flowing and I'm creating within that. Because, if you think like water without a structure is all over the floor, like it needs a bowl, right? So we all, and we are our structure for our creative energy to flow. Even at that level, you can think that, we create a structure through which our divine energy can flow, through our voice, through our actions, through our intentions, like through our creations. We're doing that. So
where do you think the feminine energy belongs in politics? For so long now, there's been plenty of female leaders across the world, in India and the UK, and we had one years ago in Australia. And honestly, the onslaught of the barrage of insults, I've never seen a politician more insulted more than our first female prime minister. Like the poor woman couldn't do anything right. She couldn't get her hair right. She couldn't get a voice right. She couldn't get her clothes right. Like, she was just insulted. But where do you think that feminine energy exists inside politics?
Well, I think one of the first things that has to happen is, I think there's a couple of things. One, like you mentioned, this getting back in touch with our hearts and our feelings. So much of politics is so driven by, mental structures around, growth economies and all that sort of stuff, and what you said about, our first prime minister. Really, like, no man was ever judged on the cut of his suit or his hair.
Exactly.
Like,
or the color of his hair or the cut of his hair.
Standard.
Exactly.
So there's that starting to feel the heart. There's also like really questioning the inherited beliefs and programmings that are so they're so entrenched in our society. Even like I was having a conversation with some women the other day around this, just the whole way our work weeks are structured, like everything, even exercise program, it's so much has been based on research about men or just fitting into male structures. And I think actually what's happening to you, starting to see too, even with men who are, younger men who are having children, they don't want the big fat job. They don't want to be spending all the time in the office. They want to spend more time parenting their children, right? So, that's kind of shifting too with the generations. But so we have to do the work to question the inherent assumptions within our structures. Like, why does a woman attract these kind of comments? I mean, what standards are we measuring by here that really need to be questioned, and I don't think that, I think there are many men who could be more connected to their hearts as well, but it's just not valued, so it's going to take some brave voices to start speaking up, and this whole growth economy model is so, again, like, growth at all costs. Well, that's mucking up our planet. It's destroying a lot of things, family lives, communities, it's just more into a big empty void. People don't want more. They don't want to consume more, really. They want to live lives with meaningful connections and be more relaxed. Like, when we can finally switch to, like gross domestic happiness versus, gross domestic product, which I know there are other countries like Britain. I love that they have that, and, we've got to switch the markers by which we measure our success as a species. We really have to. And, and our children are going to want that change. They don't value the same things that previous generations have valued. And we have to really, just stop and check into that. Like, what do we really value? I doubt, really, honestly, even if you ask some of those male politicians, I'm sure they all really value their families and their well-being more than they might admit, but they're all part of the same machine that's set up, and this is where we have to start deconstructing. And we've got this beautiful Pluto and Aquarius energy that's going to help us to start,
I know.
dismantling.
So we have to tell people who are listening, like, it's all over everywhere, all over the internet, and all my friends who are into astrology. I used to be into astrology many years ago, but I had to stop thinking about it, because you can just like try and analyze everything through astrology instead of just living in the moment. But everyone's all up in arms about Pluto moving into Aquarius for the first time in 250 years. So we've officially entered. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Well, it's not the dawning. We're in the age of Aquarius. So what does that mean? I think Capricorn was about structure and law and sort of
leadership and
rigid
like
top-down leadership. And Aquarius is more about, what's Aquarius about? Expansion,
innovation, about the people,
innovation,
expansion, and connecting with, beyond the planet as well, which is great, very futuristic and stuff like that. But so yeah, I mean, I like to just, I always like to bring everything back to the personal. Yes, there's all this stuff going on around us, but what does that mean for you personally? So I probably all of us could really benefit from feeling a greater sense of lightness, a greater sense of authenticity, kind of taking the boot off our own neck. Where are we actually keeping ourselves locked into structures that really aren't serving our full expression and authenticity and what we're here to bring? Like, I think that's what I'm starting to feel, is a lightness and a freedom. And so, well, what do I actually want to do here? Who do I want to be here? How do I want to create? Right? We get to decide that, I think that's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Like, I mean, even listening to the astrologers talk about the Aquarius energy, and then numerologically, I used to be obsessed with numerology too, but then I had to stop thinking about it, because every number I looked at, I was making meaning out of it. It was doing my head in. I still do it, I have to say. I just find the universe has a great sense of humor, because I've got all these 9s in my numerology, and even when I go to get a chai tea, they'll give me a number. It'll undoubtedly be a 9 or an 18 or a 27 or a 72, and I'm like, you have the best sense of humor. I live in a 9 house. I've got a 9 phone number. My name adds up to 9, born on a 9 day and a 9 month and a 9 year. Like, it's crazy how many 9s. So we're entering a 9 period next year, which is about evolution and ending of an old and beginning of a new cycle and change. So yeah, big changes on the horizon next year, big changes. And hopefully, Louise, that energy that we were talking about, the rise of the feminine, will start to infiltrate systems and forms of government and things like that, and in a bigger way, and be more impactful. Yeah, more inspiration.
And how's it going to do that? Through the people who are in that, I mean, I think we all went through this kind of, time where it was like, oh, just bail out of the mainstream system, get out of it. But that's not what's going to happen, is it? And let's remind ourselves that all structures, whether political or whatever it is, are man-made creations. right? So we're the ones that change that. Always bring it back to like, you are a part of everything, right? So that's where the change happens. It's not, the feminine energy isn't just kind of come massive, randomly in from somewhere. It's going to start activating through us. So how do we bring that energy in? It's noticing the way that we speak, the way that we are, our beingness, where maybe we're like still being too hardcore, too controlling, we got to look at all that stuff in ourselves, because that's how it's going to infiltrate, the systems. And then there will be that critical mass, and energy will start to shift. And people feel this. They feel the call. People will, and like you were talking about change coming, can resist that. Parts of ourselves might resist that because we kind of like the old structures.
We always resist change, change of job, change of partner, change of houses, change. We feel like our bodies are changing every second, right? Getting older.
I know.
Getting
so that's
fatter,
your
getting
ego,
bigger.
that's your ego mind, that wants to stay safe. I know how this is, it's familiar and safe, but that's not what your soul wants. Your soul and your spirit are
the
like,
soul is up for change. I think the soul comes here to explore change. And Susan says here, she's born on a 992, and yes, she's the rise of the feminine. Go, Susan. Yeah, well, talking about political structures, I know I'm obsessed with American politics, but recently I've heard that name Tulsi Gabbard, bandied around. I didn't know anything about her, so I thought, who's this woman? Who is she? What's she got to say? What are they saying about her? So I sat down and watched an interview with her and what's his name, moustache, bald head, and he has his own show. It'll come to me in a minute. He's like a host and he's been, anyway, Oprah used to love him. I can't remember his name. And I heard her story and was blown away. And she's on the team that is coming into power in the States next year, and she, by all looks of her, she looks like she's dominant male energy because she's like in the military, and I think she's a major and she's been to war. But she did explore all those things that is classically equated to male. But when she was in war, she saw the horrors of it. And like now she can talk about the horrors of it from personal experience. Like, let's stop this stuff. And she's coming, I feel, from a beautiful feminine place of like not what went wrong in war and let's think about how we can fix it, make better war, but like this is not good. So it's really interesting. So much collective resistance, Susan says. The rise of the feminine, it's been rising for a long time, but we haven't seen a lot of it inside our structures, like our political systems, but it's definitely been rising in the collective, like Women's Lib, came out. I don't know if that was the rise of the feminine or just women trying to be more dominant and more masculine. What do you think, Louise?
Well, all of that was born out of feeling the inequality, feeling the disparity, between the energies, however that sort of played out in individual agendas. The reality is, that the pendulum had swung too much the other way. And again, coming back to, what you were saying, having, you don't have to be female to have feminine energy. That's the thing. It's like, all of us can tap into that. But in terms of, expressing that and bringing that in, that's where we have to start just, just with feeling and how do I feel about what's happening in the world is a good place. The fact that person is like going, oh, actually, this doesn't feel good. That can be just a first sign that, something needs to change. It just doesn't feel good. And I think most of us would acknowledge that. We're just also very used to pushing down feelings, having feelings being negated. They're not actually, expected to be allowed in any kind of workplace, whether that's politics or anything like that. It's like all of that stuff has to stay outside. So it requires people finding their voices, around this. And I think, that's what's probably been suppressed a lot, has been the voices of women, or the feminine voice, which is now starting to come back out into the world, and that would be expressed in more, how about let's care for each other, and rather than, killing each other, let's bring more care into that. And this is how I feel about this. And is there a way? I think that, to start thinking as a collective, thinking and feeling as a collective is for me one of the major shifts that has to happen. Because when we're in separation, which is we did a big thing about separation, and that separation, whether it's male, female, whatever, us and them.
We've explored it most intimately. Separation. But like the rise of the feminine really started happening in the 60s and the 70s. And then it was kind of squashed in the 80s, right? I remember wearing military type fashion and looking very masculine in the 80s. And when I was a kid, when I looked at the 60s and the 70s, I saw all this flower power and hippie and flowing dresses and long hair. And I thought, oh, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And then when I grow up, the 80s hit and I'm like, I'm wearing like grey military outfits.
Yeah, totally. Combat pants, all the rest of it. And then I go up with a Margaret Thatcher. You know, it was then, you know, women in politics were like men in politics. You know what I mean? They hadn't changed the you know, the kind of masculine kind of paradigm. And it's interesting to see these things, you know. Definitely, and there's a lot more kind of, I mean, there's some distorted feminine stuff happening today when you look at, you know, kind of the, you know, kind of what we're doing in terms of, you know, injecting faces and all the rest of it. But there's sort of and that stuff's always going to sort of, you know, swing from one thing to the other, you know. So again, it's kind of looking at, you know, what's your relationship with your own feminine and masculine energies, you know, and you can feel into that. I mean, you can really work with that yourself, and kind of, I encourage everyone to actually really sit and tune into that. So, you know, I mean, I remember doing some healing processes, you know, a long time back, and my feminine was very kind of freaked out and disappeared, and my masculine didn't even see her. He was like this soldier, and like, you know, because I was raised like that, kind of like quite a masculine way, performance, achievement, that kind of stuff, you know. And I really, within myself, my own feminine was so kind of just ignored and pushed to the side. So, you know, starting to bring that in, and if, you know, in your daily life, that might be just more tapping into, how do I feel right now? You know? What am I caring about? Yeah, what am I connecting
Nothing more than feelings. You're a singer. She's the most amazing singer. I've seen Louise in action. Well, not many times, a few times, and she's just sublime. So we might get you to do a bit of singing and some light language. But going back to our authentic voice, did your son, or maybe, you know, how did you find what you call your authentic voice? How old is your son now?
My son is 18 now. Yeah.
So he's 18. Did you find it before him, or did he really help you bring that out?
Let me think. It was probably, I think I already, actually, it's interesting because I remember I went twice to Bali to an ashram to do devotional chanting. Both times I was pregnant with either one of my children. So they've both been with me and been immersed in all of these kind of healing sound frequencies. So I think it was like before I had my children, but, you know, motherhood is an incredible path of spiritual growth, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, my path was kind of like, yeah, I kind of got pushed kind of accidentally into becoming a healer. I remember I was working with two beautiful healers in Sydney, and they ran a meditation group, which I loved. And, you know, my children were little. I loved going to this meditation group. And then I moved away with a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And they kind of went, oh, we're changing it into a healer activation program. I'm like, oh, well, you know, I like what you guys do. I'll do that. Anyway, so that was how I started to move into my healing path. And I remember I had to do a session as part of this, you know, training. And, you know, the person who was there teaching me said, right, now you're going to open your mouth and you're going to let out some sound. And so, you know, these sounds just started to come through me, and my fingers were moving and clicking over this person, and there were these amazing tones. And actually I remember in that session there was like a beautiful tune that came through, a melody came through at the end for this person. I did another session with someone, and the same kind of flow where the sound would move the energy through, and then there would be this beautiful kind of, you know, melody that was like their soul signature tune. So that was a really powerful experience for me to start experiencing my voice. And then I went on to do more training as a sound and light channel. And, you know, my children were little at that time, but I realized, I look back now, it was actually a really beautiful time for me to do that, because I was sort of taken out of, you know, my regular work life. I had to really slow down to be with these children, and particularly with my son, who was so hypersensitive. He would reflect everything, like any emotion that I had, he would reflect it back to me. So I had to become really responsible for all the parts of me that were rising up, and really did a lot of deep work. And I think for anyone who's a healer knows that you spend a lot of time doing a lot of work on yourself, you know, and often things that you're helping people with is often around your own expression. So to have this child that was so like, he would just, you know, express whatever he felt, and he was really tapped into my field as well. So it was like an incredible mirror where I had to and be so honest about everything that was going on, because he was just like picking up on all of it. So that sensitivity, and to own my own sensitivity, which had not been really honored as a child. It had been kind of rejected. Like, why are you crying? Like, why are you so sensitive? My mother didn't do feelings, she just kind of held them in. So, she really did it. Like, she was actually very cut off from her feminine, had a very, my dad was actually, probably really say was a narcissist, I'm very obsessed with war, battles. That was my father. Like, completely, everything was about battles and wars. I had a gun cabinet in my bedroom, books about battles outside the bedroom, like really used to go with my father around the war cemeteries of Europe as a kid.
Wow.
Right? So I remember even then, right, really having this feeling, oh my God, like this is terrible. Like all of these people dying. And I remember I wanted to go to those battlefields and sing and heal the earth and all of the bloodshed. Like I really wanted to do that. Back then, I remember feeling that. So that's something I still like to do, to go and offer up, healing all that suffering. But that was the kind of the distortion that was there. So, feelings were not really valued. Intellect was valued, not feelings. So I spent 21 years, really learning to hone my intellect at the expense of my feelings. And then another 21, 30 years getting back in touch with my feelings and then valuing them. Because now as a healer, like my intuition and my feelings are such a key tool for me.
Absolutely.
The work that I do. And it's great to be able to listen and feel and get, receiving images and information. Like I love that part of the process. And so we've all got that part of us. But for most of us,
we do.
Really shut down. Yeah.
Susan says here that her son totally the catalyst for her waking up. Yeah, so as I've said, you're listening to Karen. Oh, it's 11:11 here in Sydney. Woohoo! I love that. Consecutive numbers, or angel numbers, as some people call them. Karen, accentuating the positive awakening consciousness. And my guest today is Louise Charman-James, who is a light language singer. We're talking about authentic voice, and we're on the UFO Paranormal Radio Network and the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 and 105.3 FM syndicated radio all across America and Canada, and we're streaming all over the internet as well. Who we've got? We've got a few people on Facebook, and I think a couple on Rumble and a few on YouTube. I'm not sure about Twitch and Odyssey, but yeah, we're talking about authentic voices and the rise of the feminine. And Louise channels light language. Now, this is something that absolutely gets you in touch with those feelings, as we've been talking about, because you cannot understand it intellectually. So you have to move your intellect out of the way to bring that through. Like you just have to be in that allowing process, like we talked about, the third step to the creative process: ask, orchestrate, allow. And that allowing process to channel that. Like, when did that kick in? How old were you? What were you doing? Was it recently? Was it years ago?
Well, as I was, explaining with that, when I moved, so I was probably, and as I said, I'd already had that experience of, how powerful just the chanting was. And Sanskrit to me is a light language. These ancient languages like Hebrew, Sanskrit, they all have, a power within their sounds, a lot more information, energy within the sounds than you might think just from, the words. But so in that session, so I don't know how old I was then, like probably, like my early 40s, probably, when I first did that session. And then that sound came through me. But I realized, I always loved languages. I always loved singing. I loved sound, right? And I studied languages, at university as well. So I love this ability to just speak in these different kind of, different tongues and not necessarily always understand. And I think for me, like you were saying there, Karen, about how the light language preempts the mind. I've been so trained in the mind, to use my mind academically. I think light language was such a powerful thing for me because I couldn't rely on that anymore. I had to really just open up and let the sound come through. And, and I just love feeling all of these different frequencies. I can often feel like, a choir of other beings. I work with, different beings from different, galactic realms and angelic realms and earth realms. And it's whatever frequency is needed. And it's just such a beautiful experience having that come through. And often for me, when I'm doing the light language, then I'll receive other information and images and a sense of what's going on. And it's always so I mean, there are different qualities of it. Some of it comes through to break up energy, to sort of rewire us, to break stuff up. Some of it comes through to really heal, you know, different types of tones and qualities of sound that come through, because they all have a different frequency and they're doing something different. But you know, it's also something I feel like all of us have this capacity to let our soul language out. And we probably all did it as kids. You know, we all hear kids kind of, you know, chatting away in kind of what we think are like made up nonsense languages, but they're probably just connecting to their own soul language and expressing that. You know, before you learn a language, you make sound, but you don't, you know, we all very early start to learn a particular language, but this is the language of your soul. And, you know, you just are connected to so many different aspects of yourself through light language. You know, it's something that I just love it and always feels deeply loving, really invigorating as well. And you can just use it in so many ways. So I actually encourage everyone to just have a play with it. Like, and even it's for moving emotion, super powerful for moving emotion. When you can't even, we've all had those moments, you've got big feelings, can't articulate them. You know, that can be a beautiful time to just let any sound come out, because that's just going to move the energy through. And you don't have to know in your mind what you're even talking about. And that, I think that's one of the things I really love about it. Having, you know, you don't have to find the words. You don't have to engage up here at all. So
it said in the bio that you always felt like you didn't belong here on Earth. So you probably always felt that you came, or that your soul has explored other universes, planets, you know, that you're sort of a galactic star seed. So like when you connect to that light language energy, do you feel, you know, like a identity behind it, or is it just universal?
It's different frequencies, and I often will say that I work with the family of light, because there's so many different frequencies that come in from different realms. So that's, you know, I don't know, I've heard other light language channels who often their light language will sound like very similar every time, because I work with different. When I first started to do it through working with different people, the sounds would come in would be very different for each person. It was like it brought in their own lineages, and I was just the instrument to channel that. So, you know, people go, oh, that sounded Japanese or indigenous or Hawaiian or whatever. I'm like, well, it was whatever frequencies you need and what you were connected to. So I really love that. And I've had some amazing experiences of feeling languages from particular places. Like I once had an amazing experience connected to Lyra, and it was almost like language. It was weird. It was like
cat language.
Language, yeah. And it was like I was actually having like a massage with someone, and he was like a spiritual masseur too. It was amazing though. And this whole, and sometimes the sounds are like, they're just clicks, you know, when it's very galactic, often really filled rewiring going on. A lot of people have been really kind of disconnected from their galactic connections. It's like wires have been cut, literally. So then all this energy will come in, and it's very crackly and sparky, and it's kind of like, you know, moving things around and rewiring stuff. And, you know, and I will often use my hands as well to do that. And then there'll be other energies that's just really deeply soothing, almost like there's a big pipe coming over someone's heart, and just all of these angelic tones are just coming in to fill up that person's heart, you know. And then there can be really guttural earth energies where we're just getting really embodied and in our bodies to walk our path. Like a lot of the people I work with, feet, it's just totally disconnected. And a lot of spiritual, you know, a lot of people who feel that connection to the stars. And I mean, I go out under the stars at night, and it's like they're my family. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, beam me up, you know. But they're always kind of like, yeah, you got this, you know. That's
beam me up, Scotty.
So a lot of us need to get more embodied. You know, we've got all this beautiful starry energy that, you know, you're here to do it here. So that can often be something that needs to happen. We're reconnecting, you know, up and down. So, you know, and that's
I often wonder, like so many people that speak like language say that it comes from a galactic lineage, and yet most, pretty much all highly evolved beings that have like evolved out of our 3D consciousness and live on other planets communicate telepathically. So they don't actually use verbal language, because communicating telepathically is so much more proficient than this slow way we communicate with words and ideas. And so it's interesting, the light language thing. I guess it is communicating, but it's communicating something that bypasses the intellect and goes straight. You have to listen with your heart, like you listen to music, like you know, music without words. You don't intellectually listen to music. You just enjoy it, really. You just listen with your body, right? Yeah.
Well, remember that sound. I mean, the whole universe has kind of sound as an integral part of the fabric, like that kind of humming. There is a sound to the universe, like sound as vibration. It's a vibrational universe. Sound is vibration, and I mean, you're probably right there. When light language is, it contains a lot of information in small kind of packets. More than you'd get from the language. But I think you're right that maybe we move through this. We move through light language and then maybe we're into, telepathy, or they both have a purpose because, that sound, I mean, language is kind of, it's energy and frequency expressed in vibration, through a medium. Like we need the air for the sound. We wouldn't hear the sound without the air, right? So within this, on this planet, we're able to do that. But, I mean, it's all frequency. It's all frequency. Right?
It's all frequency, but you say that sound is vibration, but everything is vibration. Like there is nothing that is not vibration. Like what we're looking at, like a computer and a desk, but it's all actually vibration. Like everything is vibrating. But there are a lot of videos online of using sound in a directed way, like humming or chanting or singing, to soothe people who are upset, or children or babies. Like there's quite a few videos out there of predominantly men humming to a crying baby, and the baby just like, have you used that? Because I know that with your son, so Louise has a son on the spectrum, and he's been given labels by allopathic doctors, and Louise sort of sees him more as a different human being, wired more sensitively. But because they are so sensitive, they do, like there's a lot of harsh energy and thought forms around. They pick up that and they have sort of freakouts. Does your son have freakouts?
He is very sensitive to sound. It's much better now when he's older. He's more of a, like, loud noises would not be nice for him because I think he's, and it's like he doesn't have that same ability to tune things out. I mean, I personally, I know you may get some of this from me too, find that we live in actually quite an abusive sound environment. Like,
we do.
I'm the person that goes to the, like, the speaker's still on. I can hear the white noise of the speaker. Like, really, nobody else cares. And I'm like, haven't you not cared?
Lot of sound pollution on this planet. There's a book, The Time of Prophecy, and there are like 9-foot aliens from a Category 9 planet who come and take this guy, and they talk to him about a lot of stuff. And they say, you humans, you don't understand how much noise pollution you have on your planet. And there is.
I understand
so much noise pollution. Yeah,
there is so much, and when you're really, it's like, it's abuse. Honestly, I actually think it's abuse. Because it really affects your nervous system. Like, talk about humming to a baby. And what that sound does is it, down regulates our nervous system. And we're designed to hear bird song and, the wind in the trees and the sound of the ocean. These are soothing to our nervous system. We're not designed to have constant, roadworks and traffic and leaf blowers. And don't get me started on leaf blowers. Really, who passed who let those through?
Who invented leaf blowers?
It's everywhere. I can't even record here because this is like power tools. But this obliviousness to this. Again, it's lack of this, sensitivity and feeling. We don't realize how bludgeoned we are by, it's all coming at us all the time. No wonder we have anxiety and and burnout and depression. Like, our nervous systems are just so sound healing really can down regulate the nervous system. So, and you can do it yourself. Just hum to yourself. Put your hands on your heart. I do this in my workshop.
Did you use that on your son? Like, do you use that chanting, and when he's having a sort of freak out to the sensitivity he embodies to the harsh environment?
You've got to pace it with my son. He will accept some of it, and I have always sung with my children, but we always laugh because we've got a lot of videos. My daughter sings a lot, and often even when he was little, it'd be like, stop singing, or that's enough talking, right? He's got a lower tolerance for a lot of input, and that's what these kids really are telling us. Honestly, I feel like they are telling us your environment is toxic and overwhelming. Like, sort it out. Because what happens, a lot of these kids, like my son's not so much of a freak out. He's an avoider. He'll have to go and take himself away somewhere quiet. But a lot of these kids, the systems are so overwhelmed. What are they going to do? They're going to bang their heads. They're going to, destroy things because it's overwhelming. Right. And I really feel they're telling us that. They're telling us that. It's too much. All of it's too much. All of it is too much.
I had Jeff Reynolds on my show a couple of years ago. And Jeff Reynolds has his own podcast show, the Jeff Mara podcast show. He was somebody that was podcasting his kids opening presents, and he had like millions of views. And then his kids grew up and he couldn't do that anymore. And he thought, I'll talk about other topics. What will I talk about? I'll explore different topics on a different podcast show. And I think like the second or third interview in, he had someone who had an NDE. And then he started exploring spirituality, and his YouTube channel took off. So I had him on the show, and I said, of all the people that you've been exploring on your show, spiritual people, because I think he has a person a day, like he does one a day. Like I do one a week. He does one a day. Like, wow. Who's impacted you the most? And he said, oh, gee, I don't know. He said there was a guy that was talking about the humming hue, like human, like hue. And he said he started doing that, and he had the most amazing impact in his life. Like his stress levels came down because he started practicing what this guy had said, like just humming hue. And I was like, wow, that's a great story. Thanks for sharing that with me, Jeff. Yeah, it was interesting to hear his story about
right. So
listening to all these people talk about spiritual stuff, so many. And the one that impacted him, well, he had to actually practice what was being spoken. I mean, listening to someone talk about humming hue and humming you are two different things, right? So he actually started practicing it. So
you know what I love about that, Karen? Yeah, well, but you know, I mean, even like that, just I often do with people is just humming, like, you know, and that's why that sound is so nice too. But even just, I'll always do this in my, you know, voice play workshops too, where we just start by putting our hands on our heart and we just sound and just you just get used to hear, and I call it like a heart tone or a heart hum, because it does sort of land you back in your body. That's the other thing that's great about using your voice. It's so embodied, like it's much, and that's what's great about chanting. Which in a mantra, that really is like a tool for the mind. It calms the mind, calms the body, because, you know, so we could all just do that together, and then maybe I'll do a little bit of light language if you'd like, but just to hum.
Well, you just start us off on the humming, darling one, and we'll hum with you.
All right, beautiful. So just putting your hands on your heart, and you're just going to do the humming on your natural, just exhale, and then breathe again when you need to, okay? And just feeling the vibration within your body, like this is your voice nurturing you, and it's a very nurturing sound, isn't it? Okay, so let's just do it a few times together. And often what I get people to do then is then to switch to an ah, and then you get that experience of internal sound versus what happens when you offer your sound out into the world, right? So we could do it 3 times, maybe and then ah, like just to notice the difference, yeah? Okay, inhaling.
I know when I do it, it cuts out your mic, unfortunately. The streaming network doesn't like us both using our mics.
Doesn't like us both doing it. No, that's okay.
But people, maybe I'll shut up and let you do it, and people can do it with you.
Or we can alternate. I'll do it and then you do it. Okay. And you can.
Oh. Yeah, I was told that the ah sound, the ah, activates your heart chakra.
It does, and it's a beautiful release.
Yeah, a release. And so the name Karen instead of Karen is that ah sound. I have a friend who changed her name from Jennifer to Anna Nara, so that ah in her sound. And she's a sound oracle. Yeah,
right.
Guided to change her name.
Yeah, and you know, this can be a really great sound. You know, if you're feeling a lot of emotion, it's just to go ah and like really just let that sound move it out. You know, it's really powerful for that. And this is the same that happened with the light language. Like there would be different tones to move different energies, to do different things. So did you also notice that difference between, you know, holding the sound inside and sort of nurturing yourself, and then that feeling of offering it out? Like we're actually creating a sound field, and when we do it with intention, that's when we have that real like creative effect on the world. And this is why we need to be so conscious of our voices, because everything that we're articulating, your sound and your intention is moving around the world and working on the fabric of reality, because it's all vibrational. So being conscious of the vibration of our words. I mean, we're all familiar, I think, with, the Dr. Emoto words, putting on the water crystals, love, hate, like the power of a word. So we've got to be really conscious about that. So we can use our sound to heal ourselves, to nurture ourselves, but we also really need to think about how we're directing that, and we can use our sound to command and to create, right? What we say, it is like a law. We're actually commanding it. But we're so unaware of that. And we're using our voices and our sound very carelessly, to be honest.
And the thing about speech, a lot of people say this, be careful what you say because you'll speak it into reality, but it depends on the vibration behind it. So we can say a lot of crap we don't really mean, and it never comes true, right? So there's not a lot of energy behind it. We don't mean it. We don't believe it. We're just crapping on. And but when you do have different frequency or intention behind what you say, you sound different. So think about it. When you're angry, you sound different than when you're relaxed. So I mean, you could say the same thing in an angry tone or a relaxed tone, different intention behind it, same words, different intention, different energies, different results. Exactly.
And like you say, because we live in a three-dimensional world where manifestation is relatively slow, it's not like we speak it into existence and it happens. We need to be more consistent with that. So if we actually need to be doing it repeatedly, like you said about with the hoop, needs to be a practice every day. But, this is the first step to start to catch, where are you like just arguing for your limitations? Or I can't do that, or I'm too this, or I'm not enough at that. Like we kind of program ourselves. And when you talk about, politicians getting to power, I mean, how are they doing that? They're doing that through speaking, right? They're programming people. And often they will use that to their advantage because they'll repeat the same kind of mantra about whatever it is that gets embedded in people. People don't realize that they're being programmed.
Repetition.
Yeah, right. So you've got to watch that, and you have to counteract that. And it's why, there needs to be a consistent kind of energy behind that. Like when people just say an affirmation, I am rich, but the frequency is I am poor. Well, the universe responds to the vibration, not just the words, right? So you've got to be the word plus the consistent
plus the vibration. You can't speak what you want into reality. You have to feel it into reality, or you have to know it into reality. I just want to say hi to Sherry. She's up there in Canada. Hey, Sherry. So we're going to do some light language. Let's do some light language. I'll spotlight you and you can go for it. Woohoo.
So, like I say, having an intention. So perhaps, for us to, call for a transmission to really support us to be in our authentic expression, to actually really, be in that loving feminine energy for ourselves, to be more in touch with our intuition. So I'm going to call for that now, and really understanding from your perspective too, that when you're receiving light language, your higher self, your own consciousness is receiving that and just taking what you need from it. So I'm not like doing anything to you. I'm just offering a frequency which you in total sovereignty get to take whatever you need from that, right? So inviting you all to just take a breath into your hearts and to get into that beautiful space of receptivity for the frequencies that want to come through for you today. Norosata kimare charurma arete. Kaela marota samarachikora sip anole kikarna kato chera urma aise. Dani kare moka chasoras bar al kinachot ibrun ale kitini makota shale morete. Ki amore che chasora atabarokana at in norashalo urma oriti. Kale se borachanamo arusip atokri al at ut inisip de noche elare. Kara at anore ma che si botukur iv ona. Kishibara no gasobarakata ialakata na shikar od amasaki atot it ale. Das orchimar odar bekenamatut keka ak inoch akirat orne. Sida nar ichono narakibara no shauro ubar it idaro inne. Kala de dimantota seka aye. Kara ich son orma ali ketoriki nale potesa ar orni ar. Chikara masoreta iana aroket ia. Rate ret inmasore ingere. Kora maata. Korma esimare di ornariti narti ima soch it amore esar it indiki rokota sarosh amore ti amora li ar Nar otosich amarokepe. Just taking a deep breath into your heart and just exhaling. Okay. So with that, I was just seeing and feeling some clearing around the throat, around the heart, and the sense of, really spreading your wings, really that freedom to be you. And the voice is part of that freedom of expression. So really notice where you've been holding that back, right? And that can be the first step, is just to really start noticing, where could I be more free with my voice? Where could I connect my heart and my throat? And some clearing there, so that we can speak what we feel, so that we can really speak from a place of deep connectedness and love to ourselves and to others as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, your authentic voice. Yeah. What would be your message to the world? I'm talking to everyone listening to this, because I know what your message is. We've just been talking about it, Louise, but people listening to this, what would be your message to the world if you spoke truly with your authentic voice, not in anger or frustration, but really that's what channeling is? What would your soul say to the world? That authentic voice is really that connection with you and the higher you, using the personality of the human you to channel through the wisdom of the expanded multidimensional aspects of you, right? Louise? Hello?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
to me.
Yeah.
Thought you were asking everyone on the online. I was interested to see
Well,
what people
them
were
and you.
what their message was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, my message. Well, I think, it's just really to remember the divinity that you are, really, and that, source energy actually, wants to experience life through you, wants to express through you, because there's no one else like you. Like, you're completely unique. When you think that source energy is this whole oneness consciousness, it's through individual expressions like us that source gets to have a whole new experience of life and gets to create in new ways. So I think really to own that is really powerful. I think if we're all stood in that place, that we're all divinity, kind of co-creating more divinity, more creations together, that would be very different. I think we've been very programmed to see ourselves as small and insignificant, and so therefore we start to look outside of ourselves for change, for rescue, for being saved, right? But it's so not true. Like, we are that divinity, and to really honor the uniqueness of yourself, like there is, to really get that to land. There is no one exactly like you. No one. We have 7 billion people on the planet. Who knows else is out there? But no one's doing it like you do. And I think that's probably would be my key message. Like, so what wants to come through you?
The jewel you're looking for is in your pocket. So before we go, do you want to sing us a little song? Have you got a little song you'd like to sing?
Oh, what could I sing? What I do a lot of is these kind of medicine songs that I love singing with, it's predominantly groups of women, but we get to sing it together. So let me think of it. So they're quite simple. So one of the ones I'll often do at the beginning of a circle is just, and you could sing this in response to me, Karen. Okay. It's just called Come Sing With Us, right? So I'll sing a line and you have to sing it back. You don't mind, do you, Karen? You've got a beautiful voice.
No, let's go for it.
All right. So I would get, have I got my shaker here? I usually have my little shaker, so you get a little rhythm. And it's super simple. So it's just a little like call and response. So it's come sing with us. And you sing it.
Come sing with us.
In the circle.
In the circle.
Lay your sorrows down.
Lay your sorrows down.
In the circle.
In the circle.
That's basically it. No, it doesn't bit more. It's I'm forgetting the words now. Let your heart be free.
Let your heart be free.
In the circle.
In the circle. Well, what about doing all that in life, not just in the circle? The circle.
There's one more line. One more
Okay.
line. Let your voice rise high
Let your voice rise high.
in life.
There you go. In life.
There you go. So
Alive.
that's super fun to sing together. And honestly, people come, they haven't sung before, they get such a buzz from singing together in a group. I just did a retreat and honestly, they loved it. We sang, we drummed. It's such a primal part of our
Yeah.
connection as humans. We've done it for absolutely, millennia, and it's only really recently that we've stopped, and we're suffering as a result. So seriously, get together with some friends and have a little sing along. Honestly,
absolutely.
So
I was with a group of people last night, the Vision Keepers, and we were singing all afternoon and all night. We were talking to, yakking and singing. But one was a new member of the group. He's a partner of a friend that started the group, and she's found love in her 70s. They're madly in love. It's hilarious. They're so cute. They're so cute together. And he's an intellect. He's written 36 books or something. But he got out the guitar and started singing his own song. And he was completely out of tune, but gee, was having a great time, and he was just loving it. And it was just so delightful. It's like he couldn't really sing, but it didn't matter. And the two of them were singing away. They were singing to each other and with us. It was, and just having a ball. Yeah.
Yeah. And people often say, I can't sing. What they mean is I can't sing like a professional. Well, who cares about that? Every child sings. Every tradition sings, and when you're all singing together, that really kind of like it just there's something about the collective voice, isn't it? We've all been in a stadium and heard everyone singing, or a football match or something. Like there's something deeply powerful about all of our voices together. So, I think do it more. Sing for yourself, sing with others. I think I'm sure that would change the world quicker than any policies.
More singing. Let's
go
in. Actually, I was talking. He's a New Zealander. I was talking to him. He's really interesting to talk to. He's been in Australia for a long time because there was a viral video that went around. I was talking to my guest, Joanna, last week about who was in New Zealand, of someone doing the haka in the New Zealand Parliament, which is like a war cry, but it's like a sung war cry. But yeah, I think we just need more types of voice and singing and music and light language or anything in the parliaments, like more singing, please, less intellect.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great? More singing in the parliament.
It would totally shift the vibe because what it does too is it brings us together, and that's what even just oming together. You can even notice it from the beginning of, say, yoga class to the end. People are much more kind of like cohesive at the end because all of their energy is been trained. So it's very powerful sound for kind of just
oming together is so powerful. When everyone comes into a room and they're all thinking about other things and we're all sort of disconnected, and when we om together and we all harmonize together, it just it instantly connects us. But I've seen you sing with a group of women and do harmonies, and it's just sublime. The harmonies are so. All right, maybe one more small song before we go. Come on, I know you've got it in you.
Oh God, I wasn't prepared for this.
I should have prepared you, but with your voice,
what would be a good one? Okay, I'm trying to think of one of the other ones that I do with my group.
I should have warned you. Sorry.
That's all right. Okay, maybe we'll do this one because it's quite embodied. It's called I Feel Good in My Skin. I think my little shaker, but it's not here. Okay. I've got to see if I can remember all the words. Okay, so it just kind of goes, I feel good in my skin, good in my bones, good in my blood. My body is my home. I feel I got strength in my bones, but wisdom in my blood. I'm forgetting the words anyway. Love in my heart, my wisdom is my power is my own. So I need the words, but anyway, it could be a great one to sing when you're feeling a bit disembodied, a bit out of it. It's great. So sorry. Anyway, I need my words.
Oh no, it was great. Come on, more. I love it.
I just can't remember words. Okay. Feel good in my skin, good in my bones, good in my blood. My body is my home. I got love in my heart, strength in my bones, wisdom in my blood. My power is my own. There you go.
Love it.
something like that.
My
So you get everyone
power
to
is
doing
now.
it together. It's so fun. Oh my goodness, so fun.
Oh, beautiful. So, what would be your message, darling one, to the world before we go? What does your soul, what does your authentic voice, apart from teaching us to sing an om and
do you know what I'm going to share with you? Something that came through. I was in Guatemala once in this amazing place with these pyramids, and it was this big wooden pyramid, and we lay down, this woman took us on this beautiful meditation, and part of the meditation had your higher self kind of like unrolling a scroll. It had a message on it, and it was such a super simple message, but it's really stuck with me, and it had a symbol on it, which after which she told me was the eye of God, and the message was just love yourself, love others, love life. Such a simple creed to live by. Maybe not easy, but I just thought it was lovely. Love yourself, love others, love life. So find a way to do that.
Beautiful. Right. Love yourself, love others, love life. Yeah, not always easy when you disagree with people. You know, like, what would you say to people who are in disagreement to find love again?
Well, look inside first and give love to the parts of you that are triggered, because it's always that. And this is why I love working with, I work with another modality called the compassion key, where we just speak loving words of compassion to those parts of ourselves that have really just become separated, just kind of become orphaned and lost in time and space. Any reaction you have to someone else, there's a part of you that has an unacknowledged experience, an emotional unacknowledged experience that you could go back and meet. What am I really feeling? What do I need to name here? You know, I'm so sorry they don't listen to you. I'm so sorry they're so stuck in their own opinions. You know, we can just give ourselves compassion for what we're experiencing and noticing. And when we do that, like, firstly, it's so empowering because I don't need to change anyone else. And secondly, when we've done that and we've really met our own feelings, then we're actually much more able to compassionately see that that other person is probably stuck in their own wounded child, their own unresolved emotions. So this is why really, you know, the work is inside. The more you can just take responsibility for yourself, your own feelings, like let yourself feel like we've been talking about, and really be responsible for basically reparenting yourself. You won't need to change anything else out there, because you will just be the change anyway. People will notice the shift in you. They will experience that. You will interact in a whole different way because you'll be coming from your loving heart. And that may often be enough to let them start to open up and meet those parts of themselves that they've locked away and haven't met. So we're powerful. We can heal ourselves, and that's how we're going to heal the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just showing people who are watching on video Soul Signature, your website. It's beautiful. You look like the gorgeous purple goddess there, looking divine. We love purple. You know, I want to congratulate you on doing this work and being a mother of someone on the spectrum, because my ex-husband, he was adopted and his sister was adopted, and his poor old parents were so engaged with looking after his sister who was on the spectrum that everything else went by the wayside. You know, like, so
it's very
I want to
hard.
congratulate you on.
Thank you.
On
and
being
honoring
your
all those other
authentic
parents, all those parents out there. Yeah, with those
honoring all those other parents, and because I mean, as incredibly beautiful as these kids are, they don't fit into 3D society, which is great. I feel that's great because they're here to teach us. I mean, I've got a nephew. I don't know if he's caught on the spectrum, but he is just one of those kids that didn't do 3D school. He just didn't do it. He didn't learn to read or write, and he didn't want to. He's an artist now. He's like 23, born on the day the towers came down, September 11. And he is incredibly successful with his art, but he just didn't do any sort of intellectual study, didn't do rote learning at all, and then grew up feeling like he was stupid. But he thinks so differently to everybody else. He thinks multidimensionally. And of course, I try to talk to him about that, but he's indoctrinated into a 3D system. He says, I'm not an alien, Karen, and I'm not special. I'm just a stupid kid and couldn't do school. But maybe one day he'll find out who he really is. Yeah, they come not to torture us, but to teach us, right?
Yeah, and to let us know that our systems are outdated. I mean, don't even get me started on education. There's a whole other thing. Right. You know, why are we filling our kids with knowledge from the past when they just, instead of letting them just blossom, you know, and both my kids, I have a daughter too who's sort of struggling a bit because she's definitely a bit different from everyone else as well, and just finding a place. But, you know, and again, that's why that you know, having that self-compassion for all of those times where people tried to put you in a box that you don't need a box. Nobody needs a box, you know.
Yeah.
So,
The education system has really something to answer for. Well, let's hope, rather than hope, let's see this new age of Aquarius. Let's be the change. Let's see the education expanding and growing with the new kids on the block, you know, with the kids that are here. I mean, a lot of those new kids, like I was one of them. I didn't do 3D school either. Incredibly creative and psychic, but dyslexic kid. So 60 odd years ago, like there's a lot of us here. They're not just the children. There's a lot of us here, but more and more are coming in. And as you say, this autism is like an epidemic, but it's not about the disease of autism. It's about the shift that autism is bringing society and structures.
You know, and it's not a disease, it's a way of being. And the same with ADHD. I think every other adult you meet now says, oh, I'm diagnosed as adult ADHD. And I'm like, well, really, like, it's not that you have an attention deficit disorder. It's that the world is just overwhelming and nobody should be able to put their attention on all of that. Do you know what I mean? So it's just
Mary Rodwell. Do you know Mary Rodwell, who's been a hypnotherapist for many years, taking people back to their galactic roots? She calls it, well, I think she got this from somebody else, but always dialed into higher dimensions, ADHD. And I have a friend who is just turned 60 actually, and he's run his own business all his life, and he's been diagnosed with ADHD. When I told him that, he was like, yes, I love it. But he's a high functioning ADHD, but having a conversation with him is incredible because he fires all these questions at you, and before you can answer them, he's like, he just has no attention. It's like you start to answer it and then he's on to the next thing. And you're going to let me answer your question? Like he has no attention.
You know, that's right. And there's a place for all of these different expressions. That's exactly it. So we start to see them all as just different spectrum. You know, it's different expressions of, you know,
when you're
divine
telepathically connected, it's so fast, that communication.
Exactly. And you know, Karen, that's what I love about light language, because I find English a bit slow sometimes. Like people are always accused me of speaking too fast. I'm like, I'm just going to break into light language now because then I can say everything I want without finding the words, you know. So but you know, we have come to be human, so you know, some of us galactics have just got to kind of slow it down a little bit.
We have come to be human, but we are teaching the human, like, but you know, with that ADHD, always dialed into high dimensions or the attention deficit, when you know, when he fires the question at me, I think he's already received the answer before I can get it out of my mouth. And so him going on to the next question, he's just energetically already received it. And in a way, it's frustrating for the person who can't answer his questions, but then realizing that he's already got the answer before he's even finished asking you the question. It just moves so quickly. It's just lightning fast. And we need to understand that. Darling one, I know that you have to go, so thank you so much for being on the show. You are gorgeous and a star, and I wish you could all see Louise do her thing, do her singing thing in person, because it is delicious and divine. And thanks so much for sharing with us on the show today.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for inviting me. It's been a joy and a pleasure. Thank you.
All righty. We've got 10 minutes to go on the show. I wanted to say to you all that next year I have a sponsor for the show. It is the Afterlife Convention, Awaken, the Rise in Consciousness. And so next year I'm going to be pretty much for the first 6 months speaking to mostly the speakers that are in this event. It's a huge event that's happening in Sydney, and they're going to sponsor the show so that I can speak to all these delicious people. A lot of them are mediums. We've got 3 different stages with speakers. I'll be one of the speakers talking about intuition and the rise in consciousness and all that good stuff. But we've got speakers from all over Australia, and Stephen Simon from the US. We're going to Zoom him in, because he's just delicious and I love him. He was on my show a couple of times. He's been on Dolly and Preston's show, The Light Gate. He is a Hollywood director, producer, whose wife died about 7 years ago. A lot of his movies depict the afterlife and what happens when we die and stuff like that. And a lot of them don't, but his wife died about 7 years ago. And even inside his huge grief, he maintained communication with her on the other side, and they wrote a book together, her on that side and him on this side. And so he's going to speak about his experience on Zoom to our live audience. But a lot of them are mediums and psychics, so I'll have them on the show. And what I'm going to do, I started it this year, and I'm going to continue it next year. I'm going to have some shows called Spirit Speaks, which means that we're going to deliver messages from Spirit to you. So if you want to join us, I'll hopefully do that once or twice a month, have a show with mediums or one medium or a few mediums, and we'll deliver little mini messages to you, the audience. You'll have to be with us either on Rumble or Facebook or YouTube or one of the platforms where I can see your comments and you can ask your questions and get a little mini reading from some of the mediums that I will showcase next year. And indeed from me, because I'm also a medium. But it's going to be so much fun next year exploring all these different Australian spiritual teachers. There's just so many. I think, yeah, there's like too many to even put on the show in 6 months. There's so many speakers involved in this event. So what do you think about that? Are you gonna join me for that? Spirit Speaks will be on the syndicated radio network on Accentuate Positive, Expanding and Awakening Consciousness next year. And maybe if you're in the States or Canada or Europe or anywhere around the world or Asia, maybe you'll come on down in June next year and join the fun with all of us in Sydney. It'll be at the Hordern Pavilion, which is a massive event space. It's actually very close to where I live. Sydney is such a huge city. It's massive. It's really massive. It's very spread out with lots of people. And it's always difficult to put on an event in Sydney because Sydney is such a big city and so spread out to bring people from all over Sydney into one event. But this is going to be the largest consciousness event of its kind Sydney has ever seen, with speakers from all over Australia, as I said. And yeah, maybe you'll come on down in June next year and join us. What do you think? Do you think you'll come? Maybe we'll get Shirley down from Canada and Cherry from Canada and Susan. I don't know where you are. I think Susan's in the States, a few of you. And Thirsty, I don't know where you are. You might be in Europe, actually. And Brad from Denmark. Who knows? Come on down. Maybe you've always wanted to visit Australia. And it'll be our winter when you come. But much of Australia in winter is absolutely beautiful, especially Queensland. Australian winters in Sydney, where I live, where the event will be, are very mild. Sometimes, well, you just can't tell with weather these days, can you? Sometimes we'll get rain, but I think we had the wettest summer on record last year. We're coming into our summer now, and I know in the northern hemisphere you're coming into your winter, and on my online group on Messenger, people are talking about the snow. Snow is falling in Canada and different parts of the US. But yeah, just like the US, down in Florida during winter, it's very mild. It's Australia is the same. There's some beautiful, if you want to go to the desert, I know we've got a conference happening in December. I went to the desert, to Uluru, in winter because it's very hot out there in Australia in the desert. So it is a good time to go in winter if you don't like the flies and the heat. But if you like that really dry heat, really the desert out in Australia in Uluru, it's very dry heat, then go in summer, go at Christmas time. Yeah, but I'd love to hear from you. What have we got? A few comments here. Oh, I hope so. What do you mean by, oh, I hope so? Terry, you're going to come on down in June next year, come from Canada and come and meet me. Yeah, because a lot of people that I have online in my group I've known for years. I've got a friend staying from India, actually. He lived here for 25 years, but during COVID, she'd like to. During COVID, he went back to India to look after his aging family, and he puts on events, Humanity in Business it's called, where he brings humanity and kindness into the corporate world. I just loved what he was doing. But of course, during COVID, they shut him down. And so he went back to India, and he's just out here staying for a week with me. And he was just saying how lucky we are. We live in the lucky country. You know, you get very complacent when you live in a place all your life and you don't realize how lucky you are. And he's been living in India in Mumbai for the last, 3 or 4 years since COVID. There are more people in Mumbai, in the city of Mumbai, than there are in the whole of Australia. Can you imagine? No one lives in a house, he said. Everyone's in high-rise apartments. It's all apartment blocks. And it's just chaos 24/7. There's a big beach there, but no one swims at the beach because it's too polluted. So when you're down under, you've got these oceans and this coastline for days, and it's pristine and beautiful and amazing. Yeah, And swimming in winter is, yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do, actually. Stop screen. So hope to see you down under, and next year, yeah, as I say, we'll be doing Spirit Speaks once or twice a month, where I'll get mediums online and we'll do some little mini readings. What have I got left? How much time have I got left? Oh, I think we're about to go. So thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. If you want to know more about me, my name is Karen Swain. Go to karenswain.com and you can see more about myself and sessions and what I offer. And if you want to join my group, love to see you in the group. And I will catch you next time. Let me find the outro. Bye for now. Bye, everyone. Big love to you.